Good morning. So today we start our new unit, which is education. So I would take a moment to just make that really clear in your books. Maybe have a title page or similar, or turn the corner down of a page or something, just to make it clear that this is a new unit. And I want you to think about now, what is the definition of education? So before we go any further, if somebody says to the word to you, education, what do you think it means? Jot that down, your views in your book. Okay, so a word for your glossary then. Education is the receiving and giving instructions to help develop skills, notably in a school. So in other words, what that means is we automatically think about education as being in a school, and school is a key place where there is education, but it's not always in school. Another thing to think about, do all people receive a good education? So again, have a moment to jot that down. Have a think about your views on that. Are there certain groups of people that get a better or worse education than others? So just before the school holidays, we asked you to design your school. So design what you think would be an ideal school. And we asked you to think about certain things. We asked you to think about the curriculum, so what you would teach in your school, what the rules in your school would be, what the building would look like and why, what rooms you would have, etc., etc. What your uniform would be, if indeed you would even have a uniform, and why. What would be your behaviour systems? So what positive and negative sanctions would you have to ensure that your rules were enforced, and anything else that was important? So you were given a fairly free rein. So what I would like you to do if you're in school is now to, in groups, talk through the design you made of your perfect school. Explain why you chose what you did and be ready to feed back to the rest of the class. If you're not in school, what I would like you to do instead is just jot down one paragraph, if you haven't already, that explains the reasons you chose the things that you did. Perhaps take your top 3 things that you chose that were important to you and why you chose them. Okay, so a title for your books today, Are Schools for Everyone? So jot that down with today's date, please, and we'll move on to the next slide. So thing to think about, what is the purpose of schools? Why do we need schools? So put that in the middle of a page. What is the purpose of schools? So you can do a little bit of a mind map around it if you're at home. In school, we're going to have a discussion around it. Have a think about, if you can think about what functionalists have said about school or society, what Marxists say about society and how schools might suit that purpose, what feminists might have to say, and also the new right. So have a think, if you can, about your various theories, but also think about what you're told. What does Mrs. Hardingham say is the reason you go to school when she stands up and does assemblies with you? What do your tutors or your teachers say? What do your parents say when perhaps you're too tired and you're thinking, oh, I don't want to go in today? Why? Why do you go to school? Press pause, have a think. Okay, so I'm hoping it is to do with obviously learning actual skills and knowledge, like numeracy skills, literacy, learning about history, geography, etc., etc. But also there's lots of other skills, what we call the soft employability skills. So learning how to take the lead, learning how to organise yourselves, learning how to communicate, work in a group, all of those things are important. Learning how to prepare for the workplace is what Marxists would say. So learning to be punctual, learning to follow instructions, learning how to behave when you've got a boss, for example. A feminist, unfortunately, would say that the purpose of the schools partly is about making sure that women know their place, and actually that men, they see again men being the bosses, men being in charge. So all of those sorts of things you might have had to think about. So we know that in sociology, part of the skill is that we need to look at data, either data that we've researched ourselves by doing our questionnaires or our interviews and so on, or data from other sociologists. And we need to look at that data and try to work out what it's telling us, and therefore what we need to do to make society a better place. So I want you to have a moment to look at these 2 graphs. The one that is a line graph is the percent of students from class backgrounds going off to higher education. So you can see that the blue is middle class students and the red is working class students. Now, often the decision whether somebody's working class or not in terms of education is around whether they get free school meals or not. So the red line is for those who have free school meals. And then the other graph, the bar graph, is about ethnic minorities and which ones achieve 5 or more GCSE grades in A star to C, so the old GCSE grades, because you can see this data takes us up to 2011. So you're looking, the blue bar is 2006, 2007, and the sort of dusky red bar is 2010 to 2011. So press pause and just have a minute to jot down anything you notice. Try to think of 3 things for each graph if you can, and give detail. Okay, so the type of things you might have picked up very clearly is what we've got is pupils not receiving free school meals. Hugely more of those go off to university, don't they? In 2006, around 25% went to university, and by the time we got to 2016, we're up in the 35, heading towards 40%. Conversely, working class, much lower. So in 2006, under 10%, that figure's probably around about 9.5% went off to university. And by 2016, it still wasn't anywhere near the level of the middle class people right back in 2006. It's never got yet beyond 20%. So at all points, it is lower for working class people going to university than middle class. However, what you might have noticed when we look at trends over time is that in both situations, it is on an upward trend. So in both cases, more and more people are going off to university, to higher education. If you look at the other graph, what you can see again is that the GCSE grades are improving. In every case, there are more passing 5 GCSE grades in 2010 and 11 than in 2006 and 7 in every area. And you can see that the highest performers, in fact, are the Indian community. And you can see that the lowest performers are Black Caribbean. But there you can see, what you can see is that things have improved. And we are looking at a percentage, white British percentage has gone from about 45% to about 55%. And you could go down all the other different ethnic groups and write their percentage change. But in every case, it has improved. So looking at the higher level thinking there, how do these graphs relate to the mind maps? What you might be thinking is actually, does it allow every student to get the purpose of education, to achieve what education is meant to be doing? Does every group of student, be they different ethnic minorities, be they a different class or even gender, does everybody get the same deal, if you like, from education? And that leads us on to our next thing, our next discussion. If we're in school, but at home you're going to have to think for yourselves. Why might some students not succeed? And again, you might think of some of the theories there. You might be able to think of some of the reasons. But why do some students not succeed? And I'm not going to actually answer that in class. What I want you to do is, or even on this video recording, what I want you to do is just try to think of some reasons, some groups of people that might not succeed and why they might. And it's actually going to be something we cover in future lessons. But I'm very conscious that on the video recordings, if I give you the answer on the next slide, you might not necessarily think for yourself. Just very finally, just want you to have a think about, ready for the next lessons or lessons after this one. Just want you to spend some time at home doing some revision over the words and keywords and the things in your glossary from last year, so from year 9. So looking at the glossaries and also looking at some of your key studies and your key sociologists. Thank you for listening.